Okay, we're live on YouTube. Mr. Town, the meeting is yours. Let me know if you need anything.
Thanks, Rob. Welcome to the Lyon Township Planning Commission for Monday, March 8th. I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting to order, and if everybody could stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty, thank you. Kelly, could you please take roll call, please?
Patricia Carconi,
Present in Lyon Township, Michigan.
Jim Chuck,
Present, Lyon Township, Oakland County, Michigan.
Bronco Mitkowski,
Present, Lyon Township, Michigan.
Ron Pennington,
Present, Lyon Township, Michigan.
Kurt Radke,
Present, Lyon Township, Michigan.
Carl Town.
President, Lyon Township, Michigan. So I'd like to have approval of agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Could somebody make a motion to excuse Mike Conflitti, who had an emergency today?
I'll make
Please.
a motion to excuse Mike.
Support, Kurt.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So be it. Can we have approval of agenda if there's no changes?
Mr. Chair, if I may, the item number 3 under public hearings, we were trying to help the applicant move forward, and the applicant has requested removal from this agenda this evening.
Okay, for the Wallbridge special land use? Or for?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, AP 21-08B, Wallbridge LDC 1 has requested removal from the agenda.
So noted. I actually never saw that even on the agenda, so I'm glad you pointed that out. I thought it was removed. So, okay. Any other changes?
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
Okay, so we'll move 4 up to 3 and 5 up to 4 and 6 up to 5. Is there any seconds?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I'd like to right now, Rob, I don't know if we have anybody online, but if there is anybody online, public comments for something that's not on the agenda would be.
We don't have any members of the public on the meeting at this point.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
And so tonight we do have 2 public hearings. The staff will report. Then the applicant will make a presentation, and then we'll have the public hearing. The applicant will go back, it'll go back to the applicant for a maximum of 5 minutes, and then the planning commission will have a discussion and action. So with that said, Brian, could you move forward with item number 1?
Thank you, Mr. Town. The special land use before you this evening is for the west building of GR LLC on Grand River Avenue. If you recall, we reviewed the site plan at the last meeting, but we are discussing a just over 100,000 square foot building intended to be used for warehousing or manufacturing with the associated parking, loading docks, and office space within the structure. The building is speculative at this point in time, and so the information that has been provided for special land use is based on the speculative building itself. Operational details we recommend that you review as a special land use once a tenant is found. In terms of the review standards for special land uses, we find that the industrial use as a spec building at this point is compatible with all of the adjacent uses. This is in our industrial corridor along Grand River, so we have no compatibility issues. It's planned that way as well as zoned that way, so no issues. In terms of public services, we understand that both water and sewer are available and are intended to serve this property, so we have no concerns there. The traffic study that has been submitted with this application indicates that there are no needed physical improvements beyond those that are planned for the distribution facility, whose parking lot is to the south. All of the other special land use standards we find to be achieved, as you can see in our letter dated March 5th. We do want to note that there's not a specific need identified with the application, which is one of the standards for special land use review. Although this is in line with all of the development trends, we've seen a lot of speculative buildings proposed and reviewed by the township as of late, all of which we understand are going the direction that we intend them to be occupied. So we don't see any red flags in terms of those standards. For wellhead specific standards for special land use review, there's not a list of regulated substances included in this building because it is speculative in nature. The same thing with the industrial activity statement has not been provided because the tenant has not been identified that we are aware of. And then any special conditions that the township board may grant or the planning commission may recommend, we suggest we review those once a tenant or a specific occupant is found and presented to the township. All of these things are a bit unknown at this point, but the development is scaled appropriately. It's the correct use classification. We see no red flags or no reason why we should withhold special land use considerations at this time. So based on the findings in our letter, we would recommend that the planning commission recommend an approval to the township board of the special land use. The only contingent or condition that we recommend being placed is the site plan be approved by the planning commission. And if you recall our last discussion on this item, the applicant has addressed all of our concerns in terms of site plan review. So we have no issues as presented to this evening.
Thank you, Brian. And it was also the site plan would be contingent upon the approval of the special land use from the board. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions for Brian right now?
None at this time.
All right, thank you. So let's, I just want to mirror this back to you, Brian, so everybody on the planning commission would understand that even though there is not an occupant, when the building has an occupant and they go for certificate of occupancy, am I on track right now, Brian? Through the building department?
Well, we would recommend that a special land use procedure be considered, or special land use be considered prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy. Yes,
And
but
that's
even a build out.
Administratively?
How we've handled those recently is the planning commission would see that tenant and be able to review the industrial activity statement and things like that.
Perfect.
Specific operational items.
Perfect. Everybody on the planning commission understand that?
Yes.
That's not a public meeting,
Okay.
public hearing though, is it?
Today, yeah, we will have a public hearing on
No,
it.
in the future. No,
No.
for the tenant in the future.
That's correct. Right, Brian?
It would be a public hearing for the tenant as well.
Oh, okay, good. Thanks. Good question. All right, moving forward to Leslie.
I have no additional concerns regarding the special land use.
Okay, thank you. Then, Bill, could you come forward and tell us what's going on with this building?
The only thing that I'd have to add, and we fully understand and completely understand the importance of protecting the wellhead district. The only item we'd ask for some consideration is on a run-of-the-mill type tenant where they pose no risk. Would the planning commission consider an administrative approval process under some strict guidelines? By way of example, just this past week, we had a 50,000-foot user come to us. They're a flooring distributor. They don't manufacture anything. They just bring it in, warehouse it, and ship it out. And for that type tenant, we were just curious if administrative approval may be considered by the planning commission.
I'm gonna let our consultants answer that, Bill. Brian?
I would say in terms of consistency with recent approvals, we would want those to come back as a special land use. I think Bill, that's a perfect example of something that is benign and could be very easily administratively reviewed. I guess if the planning commission is comfortable with it, we could look through the list of permitted versus special land uses in the zoning ordinance and consider anything that's a permitted use could be reviewed administratively, if you're comfortable with that.
Mr. Chairman,
Patty had her hand up first.
Yeah. Before we can commit to Bill, I think we have to check with Carol.
I'm not sure if the ordinance even allows that.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not sure it does either. So, you know, as much as I want to help anybody, and I'm big about that, I think Carol's not here tonight, and I really don't feel comfortable saying yes or no to anyone. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Because I don't want to promise somebody something we can't give. And if we can give it, we're happy to do it. But I think that's something we have to ask Carol first.
I agree 1,000%. Kurt?
I would be concerned about the hazardous materials that they're storing, because any business may have some really nasty things that would be the concern I would have. So it'd be kind of hard to, again, Carol needs to weigh in here, but
Are we all in agreement on the first line of order that Brian put on the record for this applicant coming back on this spec building when there's a tenant? Are we all in agreement on that?
I can confer with that.
Yeah, if Carol says it can be, I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
'Cause you have every department head with the, you know, with the admin or that's where it would go. So, but I just don't want to promise Bill or anybody else without Carol, and she couldn't be here tonight. So,
Well, I totally agree with you, and I don't think we're ready to table because of that decision there,
No.
and because of Brian's letter. I totally agree with it and how he's explained it to the planning commission. I'm willing to stay with that explanation. Sorry, Bill, but I mean, anything else you'd like to add to your site plan?
Yes, we would just like to be able through tonight to move through so that we could get ready to submit plans for construction. That's the main goal for today.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree too. Is there any other questions for the applicant? Is there any questions? I'm not going to go in order. I mean, if everybody,
I have nothing, Carl.
okay,
I'd like to, after, see if the public has any comments.
okay, yeah, that'll be no problem. Anybody else? So I have one comment before we go forward. I guess it would be for the applicant as well as our consultants. Is when you look at the site, there's a lot of phragmites that are taking over Grand River. Is there any plans to eradicate the phragmites that are in the township? And
we already we participated in a program for that
okay,
already.
Okay.
Yep. We
Good.
joined it,
Good.
I think, Carl, last year or the year before. we actually pay a fee and we're part of that program. So
Okay, thank you.
you bet.
And Carl, this Bill.
Yeah.
We've implemented our own program for the Phragmites on both GR East and GR West. So,
Oh, great, because that's
We're
what
trying
the answer.
yeah, we're trying to control them.
Yeah, it's a very attractive wild front, so to speak, you know, but if you can get rid of those Phragmites, you know, that's a plus. So thank you very much. So with that said, if there's no other questions, I'm going to open up the public hearing. Ron, is there any, or Rob, is there any people on board for the public hearing?
There are no members of the public in the meeting at this point.
Okay, thank you. Then I'm going to close the public hearing and give it back to the Planning Commission. I guess we could start with Patty. What's your thoughts on this project moving
Oh, I
forward?
think it's great. Before it was in the wellhead protection, I was willing to approve it that last meeting, and I have no problem. Bill's been always great to the township, and bringing new business here is a wonderful thing in my opinion. So I'm really happy about it, and I have no problem with it.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, same thing, Carl. I'm not going to be redundant. It's our industrial corridor. I think it's shaping up nicely. When I drive down Grand River, you know, I get excited. So I'm all for it. It'd be a great project.
Great, thanks. Bronco?
I think it's a great project. I was actually just thinking about the fact of, Bill, I actually appreciate that when we look at your plans, you try and dot all your I's and cross all your T's. You never seem to try and short the township. When it says 20 trees, you put 25. So for that, I appreciate it because it makes our work a lot easier to do.
Thank you, Bronco. Appreciate it.
Amen. Ron?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good project, a good spot for that, and I'm all for it.
Great. Kurt?
I'm all in favor of it, and I'm ready to make a motion when you're ready, sir.
Okay, I think it's open for a motion.
Okay, I make a motion to approve AP-20-49B GR LLC West Building Special Land Use with the condition that the site plan is approved by the Planning Commission once a tenant has been identified.
Okay. You want to talk about the McKenna letter?
I'm
Dated,
sorry, McKenna letter
3/5?
dated 3/5 and the CES letter dated 3/2. And there were no comments tonight because our attorney was not here.
And that would be a recommendation to the board.
And I will support the motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Somebody have something to say? Leslie?
I had a question about the motion, but never mind. I think we're moving on to the site plan, correct?
Yes, we are. We're going to move on to the site plan. So Kelly, everybody's in favor, and we're going to move on to the site plan. Brian?
Mr. Town, I did not issue a second letter. The letter that I submitted for the second review of the site plan, which is dated February 18th, covered all of our open items at that point in time. We find that zoning ordinance compliance can be achieved and would recommend approval.
Okay, the only other question I would have on that is that, and maybe Leslie's going to make a question, that is, there's still nothing added to the site plan on the improvements that are coming in on Grand River. And I think Leslie, I'll let her speak to it, but if it's been approved by the Oakland County Road Commission. So that's the only question I have. Leslie?
Regarding the Amazon, well, what I'm going to call the Amazon private drive, they are working through, I know they're close to having a pre-construction meeting. I'm just not sure if they have all of their approvals from the road commission yet. They have several agreements that they have to have executed prior to us allowing the start of a pre-construction meeting, but I do anticipate that happening soon.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Nope, I'd just like to reference our March 3rd review letter, which is in your packet. We're recommending approval as noted of the site plan. We did add a comment that the water and sanitary extensions are within the 25-foot wetland buffer. And it's our understanding that the applicant is going to seek a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, thank you. That's really good information. Applicant?
Yes, after this meeting or tomorrow morning, I'm filling out the zoning board of appeals to permit the sewer and the water to be placed in the 25-foot setback buffer from Grand River southward for approximately 250 feet. Because there's a pinch point right there where the road is to the wetland, to the 25-foot buffer. And we would propose to restore the buffer in its current condition. We propose to take video of the buffer before any construction so that we can all know what we're reestablishing. And that is likely the best way. Now, we've applied to Eagle because we go through some wetlands where we do tap the pump station, which is west of our property line. We come through some wetlands there. So the Eagle permit is being applied for. If they didn't send it in today, it'll be tomorrow. And then we'll be filling out this Board of Appeals and submitting that tomorrow to Catherine.
Okay,
But I
thank
should
you.
add, if in the event we were turned down at the appeals process, we would be proposing a couple of other ideas. And I don't know what Leslie would think about this, but maybe if we bored in the utilities underneath the setback area for that 250 feet. The other idea, and Rick Miner put this out, what if we went over and put the utilities underneath of Amazon's road and held up their road? And I said to Rick, I said, I'm not quite sure how Bezos would feel about it. So I wasn't quite ready to take that one on yet, but so
I think the ordinance does not allow this to be considered by the planning commission and is required to go to ZBA. Both Brian and I reviewed the ordinance with the wetland setback. But what is proposed right now is it's utilities within that setback. I don't have an objection to that variance request. And, you know, he'll have to go through the process with ZBA, but boring is an option if they're uncomfortable with open cut.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? I have none. Just make sure that when there's a motion on the table that it's contingent upon the site plan for the variance from the ZBA. And I think that it should be contingent upon the permit from Eagle as well. So just keep that in mind when you make your motion. If there's a motion on the floor.
And
I didn't
special
say.
land use.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, and contingent upon the special land use by the board, correct?
I have one,
Correct.
oh, by the board, okay.
Yep. I'd entertain a motion.
I can. I make a motion to approve to the board AP-20-49A GR LLC West Building site plan based on the letter dated 3/5 from McKenna and the CES letter dated on 3/3, contingent upon a variance being the required variance for the sewer and water within 25 feet for the Eagle permit that's required and the special land use approval by our board.
Do I have the support?
Support.
Okay, Kelly, could you call roll on that, please?
Jim Chuck,
Yes.
Bronco Mitkowski,
Yes.
Kurt Radke,
Yes.
Ron Pennington,
Yes.
Patricia Carconi,
Patty?
I'm saying yes. So yes, yes,
We
yes.
thought so.
Sorry.
and Carl Town.
Yes, that's a yes for me. Good luck with that, Bill.
hey, thank you very much.
Good luck, Bill.
Good luck,
Good night,
Bill. Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
So I have to do a little bit of cleanup work before we move to the next applicant, but which is Pinehurst. I forgot to make them have a motion for accepting the minutes. So I digress for a little minute. Does anybody want to approve the minutes from last meeting?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the previous meeting, which I believe was February 22nd.
That's correct.
Support from Kurt.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you for my little bit of mishap there. So next, Brian, we've got Pinehurst, minor PD amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Town. The up for consideration tonight is a minor PD amendment for Pinehurst. For those of you who may not be familiar with the development, it is located near the corner of Martindale and 10 Mile Road. You can follow my cursor here. And the item specifically up for consideration this evening is the modification to what is currently a historic preservation easement. So if you can follow my cursor around the screen, there are stormwater management facilities covering the large portion of this historic preservation easement. All of this right now is under the control of the Pinehurst Homeowners Association. The corner lots here are the Peters Barn and some associated facilities, silos, a couple other storage buildings, and then there's a single family home located on this small parcel. Right now, all of that property is covered under the historic preservation easement. The proposal would be to remove this larger parcel from that historic preservation easement. As you can see from the aerial, there's really nothing of historical value on that site. Right now, the stormwater feature or the stormwater basin serves the development. It also captures some stormwater from the barn and the single family home properties as well. And so as part of this removal of the stormwater basin from the historic preservation easement, there would also be some stormwater easements allowing the two smaller parcels to continue to drain to this. And then as part of the application, the HOA would resume, they would intend to modify their master deed and their HOA documents to include the stormwater basin as a common element to the HOA. So that's the large overview of this. In terms of functionality, there's no proposed land use changes. All of the jurisdictions that have an interest in this historic preservation easement, which is the township, the HOA, and the Michigan Historical Network, are in support of this. Well, that's with the assumption that the township votes to approve this amendment. But the Historic Network and the HOA are both in support of this change. We don't see any reason from a planning standpoint or zoning standpoint why this change would be harmful or negatively impactful. It makes a lot of sense for the stormwater facility to be included with the HOA as a common element. And from a practical perspective, the HOA pays a significant amount of money just to maintain these historical structures that are at the these changes would theoretically set up the HOA to be able to sell this property. And maybe Mr. Herring can speak to this, but it seems to me that it would set up the HOA to sell these to an interested party who could make use of them in the future, or just share in some of the financial burden of maintaining those structures and keeping them up to date. And so that could be a benefit to the township if they are improved in the future. So That's my overview. From my perspective, we are supportive of this change. We don't see negative impacts that could result of it. And so, as our letter indicates, we would support approval of this change. If the Planning Commission is to make a motion this evening, it would be a recommendation to the Township Board, who would have final authority.
All
Mr.
right.
Town, you're on mute.
Do you guys want
There you
me to talk or you want me to wait?
Leslie, do you have any comments on this, Pinehurst?
No, there's no engineering related issues.
Okay, I just wanted to check. I know there, thank you very much. Any questions for Brian, or do you want to go to the applicant?
I'm
Go to
okay.
the-
Okay. The applicant, HOA president, is that right, Mr. Harrington?
No, I'm actually the attorney for.
Okay.
For
Thanks,
the
Matt.
I used to live in Eagle Heights though, but that's in the city across the way. But that doesn't quite count. Mr. Kesey did an excellent job of describing, both the like the actualities of what's going on, laying out, and you could actually see in the diagram how the border of the condominium is just to the north of the retention basin. And, one of our goals is to, assuming that this is approved, is to try to bring the retention basin in so it's not just owned by the association, but brought into the condominium as a general common element. He also did mention that, there's a stormwater, a drainage easement that would go along with it, that if this occurs, would give the right to the historic parcels to continue to drain into that basin. So at least from our perspective, there's nothing that we would intend to do or do that would alter the use of the properties as they're structured. And we would maintain the historic easement on the two parcels that have the historical buildings. And if you saw from the packet, as pointed out by Mr. Kesey, that the Historic Preservation Network of the state has consented and has executed a copy of the agreement that exists with them. There are basically two agreements that are in play. One is the actual easement, the historic easement itself, which has been pre-signed or has been consented to by the network. And the other is the PUD with the township that would require, approval at the township level based upon your recommendation. That's kind of the gist of it. Mr. Kesey did touch upon a matter, although I don't think it was explicit in the application. It does come out in that part of this is an evolved step, the stage being if in the future we are able to identify somebody who is willing to accept the responsibilities that go along with the properties, that may be something that the association looks to in the future. But what we're doing tonight does not affect the easement as it pertains to parcels 49 and 50, which have the historic buildings on them. I'm happy to address questions, but there were two letters, both Mr. Kesey's letter on behalf of McKenna, and then there was an engineering letter also that I think was commented on that had no comments.
Thank you very much, Matt. Does anybody have any questions for Matt?
No, they need relief from this property. They've been wanting to sell some of that off. Can you imagine having their homeowners association fees on that?
No, it's a tough situation. I agree with you.
It is. I was not for it when they brought that development forward. I know because, think about it, buy a brand new home in a development, and then you have to take care of this historic farm that you really can't do anything with. So I think it's a big burden on them. I hope they can sell it if the board agrees to release the easement, but I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, the Jonas isn't going to be on us. It's,
That's right.
So
Right, Carl.
I have no issues with it whatsoever. I'd entertain a motion if anybody,
I'm ready,
Please.
Mr. Chairman. I'll make a motion, AP-21-05 Pinehurst PD minor PD amendment be moved forward to the board, recommended to the board based on the McKenna letter of March 5th, 2021, as well as the CES letter of March 3rd dated 2021.
Support? Kurt?
Support.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody against? All right, then we can move that forward. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
So
Good night.
last but not least on our agenda is our master plan public participation. That's a lot of peas. Pickle peppers. So if you could, I'm sure everybody read it, but if you give a little bit more insight, Brian, into your scheme here, it all looks good to me, but I'm sure somebody's got some questions. So move it forward, Brian, please.
Sure, thank you. So I know we're going to be designating our second meeting for most of these master plan items, but I wanted to touch on this since we had a light agenda. And I know, Carl, you had some suggestions as to what we should do. So I wanted to outline what I'm thinking, and we can play with dates and we can play with specifics, but I'd really like to do 3 elements as part of the public engagement for the master plan. The first would be an online survey. We would just do a pretty typical Survey Monkey type thing. And we can bring those specific questions that we're going to recommend to you later this month, hopefully for some discussion. And if the Planning Commission is okay with it, we could set that live shortly thereafter. Leave that up for about a month so that we can gather that input. And we would put a hard deadline on that survey being open so that we can begin to analyze the results of it and include those with our goals and recommendations in the update. You had also expressed some interest in either having a standalone meeting where the public could come and provide input, or we could do that at a secondary meeting or at one of our regularly scheduled meetings. That could be an input session that we advertise via either Facebook or on the township website, or post notices throughout the township. Those notices would not have to be formal 15-day in advance notices like our typical public hearings, because it's an optional item. But that's how I would go about advertising that. And then whether we hold that in person or via Zoom, I'd like to get your feedback as well. Then finally, the last item that I've got listed is attendance at Kite Fest. And Jim and I talked a little bit about it by happenstance this afternoon, and he was kind of on the same page that I was, that maybe it's a half day where McKenna and or some of the planning commissioners or board members man a booth at Kite Fest, make ourselves available, have some maps, have a few little exercises that people could participate in. But by this point in early June, I'd anticipate that we'd have a good chunk of the plan written and done. And so we could get some pretty focused feedback on, hey, is this plan that we're ready to adopt? Is that representative of the general public? So those are the 3 items that I want to run by you tonight. And then if you have any specific comments or specific thoughts on those items, I'm happy to hear it.
Okay, I guess we could go in order, Patty. You're in the hot seat tonight. You're first.
Well, you know how, Brian, we talked about trying to match the future land use map and the master plan?
Yep.
And that kind of has been our biggest thing. So I guess that's one of the things that I would really, if we can, try to investigate and look in those areas. And you know, the one we just talked about for Culvers, and so there are other ones like that that I think we need to address. So in my opinion, those would be some of the important ones to look at. And that's, I guess, my comments.
And do you see that as something that the general public should comment on, or the planning commission specifically should focus on those, or both, I guess?
Well, remember, well, you weren't with us though, but Leslie might remember. Remember when we had the charrette? Remember, guys? Carl, you might
Yes.
I
remember.
remember.
Yeah, I
I
remember.
remember.
And, and, and I actually thought that was a really good idea to have that. So I think we had already worked on that. And then we had those boards and everything was open to the public and our businesses. And I don't know, I thought it was pretty successful myself. So I always think we should work on it and then maybe we should show what we think to the public. And have, maybe have a working session, and, even our businesses. I mean, they're part of the game here. So, maybe, and people might come and they might not come, but I thought that worked out pretty good. I think we're pretty knowledgeable about our plan and what we might want to look at. And maybe the public, I don't want to say they wouldn't, but I think once we put our ideas into it, then maybe it would be a good idea to let the public comment like we do on like our parks or anything else. So that would be, I think we should work on it and then let the public see it and comment on it. And then have a regroup, after we get all the comments, and maybe, have one night for businesses and have one night or day or whatever you pick for the general public, or maybe just have it a whole day, I don't know what that part is the right answer, but my thoughts.
Very good thoughts. Jim?
Yeah, very similar. I remember the charrette. I think it's successful. I think the most important thing is the transparency and letting people be involved. And you never know, we might get one or two real positive things out of it. I like the idea of whether it's the kite festival, whether it's in the township hall. Obviously, the kite festival garners many residents up there. You've all been up there. You know how many people we get. I like the bit involving the business, but I think it needs to be separate because you're looking at two succinct different people when you look at a business person versus a citizen. And sometimes putting that all together, in my opinion, probably wouldn't be as beneficial as having two separate presentations or whatever word you want to use. So, and I like the way you laid it out, Brian. And also our fire station monument signs, it's a good place to advertise too, in the library. So as far as getting the word out, I think we can do that very successfully in using some of those signs along with social media.
No, those are really good suggestions, as well as both the library and the township both have their newsletter that comes out once a month. So it could be a priority. And there's a lot of people that do look at both of those newsletters.
Oh, yeah.
And not to snub the township, but a lot of people are following the library letter that comes out too. So I think those would be good areas to advertise on. So thanks, Jim. Franco?
I think it's a great idea, especially doing the in-person. I think Kite Fest is an amazing time to do it. I think the more times we can get people to actually physically go to look at it is better. I mean, I remember coming to the planning commission meetings last year, and if nothing else, there's at least a few people in there. And since I've been on the planning commission, we have yet to have any public participation. I don't know if people are put off by the virtual, or maybe they're just watching on YouTube on YouTube and not calling in. But I think that in person's the only time we're really going to get any super input.
Yeah, good suggestion. I agree. Ron?
Yeah, I agree also, Bronco. I think in person is great. Although I do think the online survey is a good idea too for some of the millennial crowd that want to do that kind of thing. I definitely like the ideas of getting it in front of other people, the public, and getting their opinions on it too.
Okay. Kurt?
I apologize. I had to step out for a split second. My wife's phone connected to my earbuds, so that
Yeah,
if
sure.
I missed the beginning, what Brian is suggesting is do the survey for a month and then have the public meetings. And and I didn't hear anybody say no survey because I think there's value to that. But I'm not a newbie, I guess, on the board, but I don't know if I've been around for many surveys, but we only get probably a small percentage of people, but the people that do speak up or get involved, they're pretty passionate sometimes, correct?
Absolutely.
So I think to Jim's point, do the survey for sure. And there could be some great ideas that come out of it, something we may have missed or not understood maybe. But I think what you presented, Brian, is good. I like everything I've heard. I think we should do all of it.
Carl, can I just interject something real quick?
Sure. Yeah.
We have used them before. I think you guys know that. We used them before at the library. And yeah, it gives you a pulse of what the community's thinking. And there are people that will fill it out, whether they're millennials, whether they're Gen Xers or Ys or whatever, young families. So yeah, I certainly would want to use that as sort of the kickoff or the catalyst and then move it forward. So there is value in that.
Yeah. So with the monkey survey, the survey monkey, sorry about that kind of reversal there, with the hard deadline after a month. I mean, I think that through the survey monkey and our advertising, we should have a connection between the both. So when that survey ends, come and we should have a date set that for our input meeting, our first input meeting. We got to keep them succinct together. So once we get that the citizens, we can hold on to them and they can, we can they can come in and see that we actually listen to them and have something written down concrete. And I think that is the turning point that we could have bring it to the public again. And I think if we can't do it in public, then do the third one virtually. But I think that we might have to reverse those depending on COVID, but I can't predict anything. But yeah, I think that it should be, right together, one leading into the other. I totally agree. So I think we're going in the right direction. I think Patty being full-time in the office can help set us on the right path with Brian coming in the office, because I think we all agree. I mean, it's a great idea, Patty, especially with Carol suggesting that with the master plan and the zoning ordinance, because it's so important for the future, that we know that it's going to be a transition area, for example, over the project we just did by the railroad tracks and the last industrial section, and let people understand how we're moving, and one of those parcels on Napier, parcels on Griswold that we haven't got into yet. The parcels, there's so many parcels that we have thoughts and ideas on through this township that we need to share with the public. So we either get yay or nay and nip it in the bud now, so we don't create problems going forward, I guess. So this is a great time to really shine, and I think everybody's on the same page, Brian. So would you have any feedback to us?
Well, I like the idea of maybe that in person. So I guess my second bullet point there, the meeting to discuss survey findings. I'm completely okay with turning that into more of an interactive charrette type activity. And I'll look back at what the township and Chris worked on and had available at the last go round. If you liked that, we can certainly put that together. And even if depending on, as you said, Carl, depending on COVID, even if we have to do that virtually, we've got a couple tools that we can utilize to do a makeshift online charrette if we have to.
Cool.
I think that's good. And then, the Kite Fest one will be pretty easy to maintain distancing and still have an in-person type event that we can present at. So, that's my comments based on what you all have said this evening. If it's okay with you, I'll move forward and I'll have a list of survey questions prepared that we can discuss at our next meeting. And then I guess the only thing that I'd ask you to consider is when you want to do that charrette meeting, whether it's in person, it could be the second meeting in May. It could be a special meeting if you'd prefer to do that, but give that some thought, because what I'd like to do is at the conclusion slide of the survey, invite people to that event. So they've done their 10 or 20 questions or whatever. And then as a thank you, say, our next public engagement is going to be X date, please join us. So that they're
That's
looking
perfect.
at it, they're thinking about what comes next.
That's perfect.
And tying
Leslie,
everything
we
together.
respect your opinion. Please tell us what your ears are telling you.
I don't really have a lot of feedback on this one because this is really a Brian department.
No, I know. I do respect your opinion, and you've been around the township long enough to hear the complaints.
I think in-person meetings are better for this type of engagement personally, but I also prefer the in-person. I think the Kite Festival might be difficult to get a lot of feedback, but it would be a great place to advertise public meetings.
Okay.
So that
Thank
would
you
be
very much.
my suggestion.
Oh, that's a great suggestion. Thank you. Anybody else? So we're all set?
Yeah, just adding, Carl, I really agree with Leslie. Typically, and I like the idea, Brian, that you said, please join us for the next phase or the next piece of this, but boy, people just don't really want to call in and do Zoom meetings and stuff. So I think somehow, I don't care where, when, gosh, I really think to be in person is where we're going to get the benefit. And maybe Brian, for our next meeting, maybe you could lay out that timeline and dates, just so we have a better picture. And we've got the umbrella. Now I guess we just need the elements with dates. But that's all I wanted to add. I just feel so strongly, and I realize that we probably can't have it like the charrette we had a few years back, because we're not going to be able to be open probably as it relates to what the state's mandating. But an outdoor event with air, with some heat in June, with more additional vaccines and so forth, vaccinations and masks, I think would be fine. So that's all I wanted to add.
Thanks, Jim. I guess I have one kind of closing comment. I think is that I believe that the DDA and Tina have a lot of information on some of the associations through Lyon Township. And I wouldn't want to miss that opportunity to make sure that we get a letter out to the associations in the township and the different neighborhoods. Do you agree, Brian?
Yeah, that's good. I think Mel may have been maintaining an HOA list at some point. I know somebody at the township has one, maybe worth updating, but that's a good suggestion, because each one of those HOAs probably has a newsletter that goes out every once in a while as well.
Yeah.
It's a good suggestion, Carl.
Okay, thank you. So we have some reports maybe by Patty. Do you have anything to share with us?
I sure do. So we did have our township board meeting on Monday, March 1st. And we had, let's see, we had an announcement that they're going to have the 12th annual Kite Festival.
Yay.
Yep. And we did hold a public hearing for our community development block grant funds. So we had no unfinished business. Under new business, we approved the community development block grant funds as they were presented by Brian for us. Then we had the first reading to approve. It's some changes in our sewer and water ordinance so that it matches our agreement with Lion wastewater. So we had that, and we had the first reading. We had the Meadows of Lion plan development. They asked for an extension. And that was very stressful, but it did pass 4-3. They had asked for a 2-year extension. You know, they own the property across the street from that, and those two developments need to go because they're paving that portion of 9 miles. So then we had the resolution to terminate this little teeny portion of a sanitary sewer, which is like in the middle of Zot Automotive's development. I mean, it's like this big. So we approved that. We had, let's see. Oh, we had our poverty exemption resolution that gives the guidelines. The state of Michigan had changed some rules at the end of last year. And so we had to update our poverty. And that's when you go to the Board of Review and how you qualify for a poverty exemption. So we did that resolution, and Jim's doing that right now with Board of Review. We did approve $35,000 for the Marjorie Ann sidewalk crossing of Pontiac Trail. And I think that's with the city. And I think, Leslie, that it didn't cost that, but it was just the 35 to do engineering, wasn't it?
No, that would be the township's portion of construction also.
Okay, all right. I couldn't remember if it was the whole thing or that. We approved that with the condition that the city puts in the same amount, which I'm hoping they are, because we had Lisa and Chris Enlow had the discussion on that with Paul, the city manager.
And we're doing a little kickoff with Paul.
Oh,
in a
good.
couple of weeks.
Good.
Yes.
That'll help the kids get across the street to go to school. So remember we had that safe routes to school, and that kind of didn't get to go, but this will help, be very helpful for the kids. Then we had the Lion DDA core sewer installment agreement, which I am so happy about. And this is Leslie and I have been working on this, and the township sewer enterprise fund is going to be loaning some of the businesses in our downtown area that can't just afford the big chunk of the REU's fees. And I think it included their grinder pump too, right, Leslie? So I'm so happy that the township did that. And so they are going to have a special assessment over 10 years to pay that money back with a 3% interest. So that is really going to help. I think we already had 4 sign up, and I think Leslie's working on a few more. So we had those agreements, and the township board approved those.
That's awesome. Is that Terracita's included?
Yeah. Were they on it? Yes. Yeah. It was Weena, Terracita, was the barber shop?
Yes.
And the winery.
The winery.
Oh, nice.
So far. And hopefully there'll be more to come. I mean, I hope they do.
We're working on 3 other ones.
It's a great deal for them, actually. So,
but it's great for us because we get to keep them.
Yeah, it was immense. They needed help so bad. You think they're little businesses, so they need to be able to pay it over time. So then we had the consideration of movies in the park pilot event, and that's where they're thinking about having renting a movie screen and try to do it through your car. And so the board did give approval for that. I think they're going to try it once, see how it goes. That you know, I think that's anything we could do to bring people out and, you know, get them in our parks. I think it's all good. And then the last thing we had was a resolution appointing the election commissions. And these are, Michelle needs 2 every year. They have to be from the township board. And what they do is they actually observe the election equipment and that it works and then all that kind of stuff. So I think it's Sean and Chris Enlow, I think, are on that. And that concludes my report. And then I just want to give you some tidbits, because you know I always love that. So we had our assessing meeting with our assessors, and I am so pleased to tell you that the township as a whole went up 5.5%. We were second in Oakland County. Holly was, they grew a little bit more than us. The residential went up 2.2, but our commercial and industrial has brought us up to 5.5. And I think that is just, again, amazing, and how lucky we are that we're still getting that great growth along the Grand River corridor, which, you know, really helps our tax base and it helps our township to grow. And so I think this is probably either the 7th or the 8th year in a row that we have either led Oakland County or Holly edged us out a little bit, but I always like to tell you guys about that stuff. So, and I'm
Very
in
good.
settlement right now, and Michelle has a little election in the Northville School District in May. And the township hall is coming along really well. So again, if you guys get time and you get a moment, stop by. John will be happy to take you on a tour. He loves, you know, those are his projects. He does a great job. So, and spring is coming, and maybe you guys want to go see the water towers, or the water plant, or the sewer treatment plant. Again, he would love to take you. He's really good about that. You know, even on short notice, you know, just give him a call or stop in and make, you know, say, hey, how about tomorrow or the next day or next week? He loves to do that. And you'd be fascinated how everything works. It's very cool. So
Good, thanks. Yeah, thank you. Brian, one thing I'd bring up is that we used to get a lot of invites to the grand openings, and I thought of it as because hopefully we're going to have one at our addition at the Township Hall, some kind of grand opening for the public sometime down the line, because I think that would be tremendous. But I'd like to see the Planning Commission get invites and know when the dates are going to be for the opening of these buildings that pass by our way. We used to do it in the past. I think it's kind of important to see the final product. So I digress. If you could, somebody could talk about that.
Yeah. Just one little note, Carl, a lot of places that opened, like Zykes and Exotic, and I can't think of what else, Zeiss and Exotic for sure. They have not had their grand opening yet because of COVID, but they still told us that they were planning on having a celebration. And, you know, for sure, we should make sure that you guys get invited. It just, we just haven't had any, because she just opened up in person for 25 people just this past week, I think it was.
Okay.
So
thanks. Keep us
no
in
one's
mind.
forgotten. It just, we just haven't had any. It's just hasn't happened. So
okay, thank you. Any other questions? And if
I
not,
got a
I'd entertain
tidbit,
a motion.
Carl.
I'm
Carl,
sorry?
I have a tidbit. I got my second shot today. I'm feeling fine, and
Very nice.
no reaction, although my wife's a little sleepy, so she might have caught a little bit of it, but feeling good. So I got both shots in.
Good for you, Jim.
I went to the same place you did, Jim.
Yeah.
Community college.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I took my sister today to Rochester. She's 78.
Yay.
I'm so happy for her. And it was a drive-through.
Wow.
Where Jim and I went, it took a little while. You had to go through a zillion steps.
It wasn't bad, was it, Patty?
No,
45
my
minutes.
sister's was like a breeze. It was
Wow.
like 15 minutes in the car, checked you in, got up there, did your little thing, gave her the shot, and we went across the street in the parking lot, waited 15 minutes.
Carl,
Super
were
fast.
you ever part of? You said you were part of that study. Did they tell you which you got, the placebo?
Yeah. So
fill us in on that. That was interesting when you told us.
So they unlocked me last Wednesday because I had a chance to get a shot from Ascension or Henry Ford. I ended up getting the Henry Ford on Saturday down at the main hospital, which took me all of 7.5 minutes. They wanted me to sit for 15 minutes, and I just
Yeah.
said, "Well, I got to go to the bathroom," and then I snuck out. So,
You didn't sneak out because you got to get your card back.
so they unlocked me. Long story short, and I got the placebo.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got the placebo, and they want me to continue in the trial.
Cool.
So they'll follow me for 2 years.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Good story.
So
I have one
entertain a
question.
motion.
Oh, I just had one question for Patty for the board. Last year sometime you had talked about wanting to try and get township wide garbage and recycling. Has anything happened with that ever?
No, we have not done anything about that. Actually, it was kind of John Hicks brought that, I think, John and
Yeah,
Chris.
it was John and Chris that were doing it.
Yeah, and then I think maybe they talked about it, and then COVID hit, and we haven't really brought it back up. I am all for it, but
I am too.
not everybody else is. So
I'll tell you what, I think that's a perfect thing to give to the new guy. I mean, Robert and Chris can knock it out, no problem.
yeah, it's funny because I think everybody has such an opinion on that, and some people think it's over government. I'd like to just pay it once a year on my taxes and be done with it. I mean, that's me, but
And you'll save a ton of money.
oh, it would. It for sure. Mine just went up to $74. 73.
I actually canceled my recycling because I called Advanced or whatever they are now, Waste Management.
Mm-hmm.
I called them and they told me that mine was only $30 for garbage and it was $55 for recycling.
What?
So I was like, all right, I just throw it all away, I guess.
They're still losing money on recycling, apparently.
I guess.
Yeah.
And it sucks. I'd love to recycle more. It just, I have a hard time swallowing every time, well, I have Advanced and they just nickel and dime me for everything.
I think we're like $54 a quarter, and we're with, Duncan sold to Rizzo and then Rizzo to GFL. So we still have a pretty good.
Green for life. Mine's expensive. Maybe because are you subdivision wide, Jim?
Yeah, yeah. 250 homes, they're probably doing the math and saying we can give this rate. So.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing. I don't know.
You know what? I have no issues if we went township wide. And I guess, when you're in a city, you don't have a choice, basically. And I understand the difference in the government, the thought process, and all that stuff. So.
Kurt, you're muted.
Oh, I muted?
No, Kurt.
Oh.
He keeps raising his hand.
Thank you, Bronco. On a related question, Patty, last year we talked about hazardous waste having a day. Did I miss that, or did we not do that?
No, I think we did talk about that. We did say we would look into it, and we did put money into the budget, but now I can't remember who's supposed to be looking into that.
Is that something we could possibly do this spring?
We should. Why don't I just talk to John about that tomorrow?
Okay.
Let me just mention to him, because I can't remember who had that. Green Oak has a great one.
It's funny, I brought that
You
up.
want
today.
it in the spring. I mean, you would like, because people clean out their garages and they
Yep.
get rid of everything. And Mark St. Charles does a great job with his. He just contracts it out, like dumpsters and stuff. Now, where they take it, excuse me, I don't know, but and I know Milford has one, but they have township and village-wide garbage haul.
Yeah.
So theirs is just, and I know she always works it. Everybody volunteers to help. So I'll mention it to John tomorrow. See if I'll send you an email,
Thank you.
or I'll update you at the next meeting, one or the other, or I'll email everybody. So, but I'll ask him. I can't remember who talked about that. If somebody said I'll look into that or not, I don't know.
The other nice thing about township pickup, you have subdivisions that have trash out all week because one's using GFL, one's using Advance, one's using Upco. and
Oh,
it
yeah.
just looks terrible in a sub. Now, when you're by yourself, I guess it doesn't matter, but anyway. That's all I have.
Okay, that
Motion.
concludes our session.
Nice job
Aye.
tonight, Carl. Motion.
Oh, thank
to
you.
adjourn.
Good job, Carl.
Good
Thank
job,
you.
Carl.
Thanks.
Yeah, they're piling on, Carl.
All right. Motion.
I made it already.
Oh,
Support.
any support?
Come on,
All right,
Carl,
all
pay
in
attention.
favor? All in favor?
Ah,
Bye.
Aye.
Aye.
you win,
Good night,
Brian.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Night, Kelly.
Night.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Rob.
Good night.
Bye, Les.
Bye.
Bye, Bronco. Bye, Rob. And the last one, I'm out.
Yeah.